Hi there, this is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, and welcome to another episode of In the Frame. Today I'm just going to discuss the British horror and a western film series from 88 Films, which are mainly from Tigon Productions. There's two titles from another production company, but they're all mid to late 60s to the early 70s, and if you're of a certain age you'll have a nostalgia for them, but if you're not, see how many of them are actually worth watching. Tigon was really the brainchild of a guy called Tony Tenser in 1966, and he was not necessarily like William Castle, but he was certainly into promotion and what would make a splash. Obviously Hammer was about, and I don't know whether Amicus was about as well, or they came slightly later, but I think Amicus would be about as well. Tigon were actually a bigger company than Hammer as far as money, I believe. But Tony Tenser, as I said, was kind of obsessed with trying to get as many words like curse and death and horror and terror into the titles of films, even though it didn't actually make any sense to have them called that, but make a splash anyway. Now, some of these I had never seen, but some of them I'd seen multiple times back in the olden days. Some of them are films that were always on the television, some of them not so much. So I think they made kind of 12 or 13 horror films, so I think there's one certainly coming in November, The Virgin Witch, with the Michelle sisters. Vicky Michelle, probably more famous for her role as one of the waitresses in Allo Allo, the fairly terrible BBC sitcom set in the resistance years in France. So I'm just going to go through these titles. Again, all of them have special features, but they kind of vary in amount on each title. So we'll start with the first two that are officially Planet Film Productions. Again, I don't know how many more of these 88 Films have license for, but we'll start with 1966's Island of Terror. So they all come in these lovely slip covers that are kind of glossy, but they're still kind of textured as well. So if you're a slipcover fan, these are very nice slipcovers, and you also get alternate artwork, and you also get a booklet as well. So this one is one that I had seen before, and most of these are actually a little bit silly, but because of the casts, you know, Peter Cushing's in quite a few of these. There's Christopher Lee, and this one's Peter Cushing and Edward Judd. Edward Judd is one of those, that's him there if you're not familiar. It's one of these square-jawed, you know, British man's man, you know, ladies just find irresistible, even though a couple of these films he just comes across as being probably a sexual predator in today's terms, but in those days he was, you know, a lady magnet. So quite a lot of these films are about isolated areas, in this case an island, where people are turning up dead in various horrendous ways. Like this one, all their juices have been extracted. This one's a lot of fun. It was directed by Terence Fisher, who obviously did a lot of Hammer. So you find in Tigon there's quite a lot of cross fertilisation with Hammer, and to some extent Amicus as well. I say all the prints on these look wonderful. I'll get to one specifically because I did have one of these on another label, and certainly the print on the 88 Films version's much better. So this has, I mean, on the back cover it says it's a little bit of Jules Verne and H.G. Wells. It's also a little bit Lovecraftian as well to some extent. It's quite good because you can say everything's Lovecraftian really without having to explain yourself. Again, all of these are generally about an hour and a half. Due to budget, they don't really have time to waste time, if you will. Granted, quite a lot of them just throw in a romance for no real reason apart from to have a romance. But then when you're dealing with Edward Judd, you know, it's hard not to have romance, as women are just swooning all over him, or finding him an aggressive arse, one of the two. So this one has probably got least of the special features on it. It's just got a commentary by film journalist David Flint, but it does have a trailer, and obviously it's got a booklet, notes by Barry Forshaw, who does a lot of commentary work himself. So Island of Terror, it's a lot of fun. Again, it's an R. Peter Cushing, so what more do you need? In 1967, this has been available on Blu-ray before, and I've always kind of never got around to it, so I was happy to see it getting this nice treatment. And this is Night of the Big Heat. This is one of the underrated, I wouldn't necessarily call it classics, but it's certainly a wonderful little film. Again, on a remote island. Yeah, common theme, these remote islands. But as you can see, it's got Christopher Lee, Peter Cushing, Patrick Allen, who is essentially similar in the vein to Edward Judd. And in this one, Patrick Allen is a complete womanising, well, he's basically a sex pest. So he's a writer who's moved to this island for peace with his wife, but he seems to go through secretaries in one way or another. So Jane Merrow, who's his latest secretary slash lover, has followed him, much to his displeasure. But as in the title of the film, things hot up, people get very hot and sweaty, and then it's up to the strange Christopher Lee character, who seems to be carrying out experiments and finding out whether his theories are true about what's causing the massive boost in temperature. It's really wonderful. So you've got the domestic drama, and you've also got people dying in very hot ways. So again, lovely slip cover on this one, and reversible artwork. Again, you've got the disc and the booklet. So this one is one of the ones I would definitely highly recommend. I mean, I'd recommend probably all of them if good old fashioned British horror or British sci-fi appeals to you. These are all just well worth getting, but Night of the Big Heat is certainly, I think, kind of one of the underrated films of the 60s and 70s as far as British horror output is concerned. This was directed by Terence Fisher. Again, 94 minutes. This is one of the epics. It's 94 minutes long. Of course, it's very silly, but it's. So we'll go on to the Tigon films. We'll start with one in 1967. This is from Michael Reeves, the kind of one of the What If directors. Is he only directed 3 films. This is his second one. This is The Sorcerers with Ian Ogilvy, who was in all 3 of Michael Reeves' films because they were friends. And Boris Karloff, who obviously at this stage his health wasn't the greatest in the world, but he's a trooper. Also Catherine Lacey. And for the Tigon films, 88 films, have done these yellow spines, which are quite nice. And they've done a little icon for each film. So this is about mind control. Boris Karloff and his wife want to control. He turns them on, he turns them off to live, love, die or kill. So not a lot of moving around for Boris Karloff. But this one's a lot of fun as he and his wife get to control young people and live through their experiences, and his wife gets off on the power and wants to go further and further and further. So Boris Karloff isn't really the villain in this, it's actually his wife. Boris Karloff just wanted to innocently take control of people's minds, but his wife takes it too far. And again, this one is a lot of fun, 85 minutes. This one's got 2 commentaries, one by William Fowler and Vic Pratt, who Vic Pratt obviously does a lot of work with BFI, and a commentary by Kim Newman and Sean Hogan, and Can't Get You Out of My Head, Ian Ogilvy on The Sorcerers, Black Magic Camera, interview with assistant cameraman Don Lord, Controlling the Cuts, interview with editor David Woodward. You know, obviously, as in the case with all these films, the people that worked on them are obviously thinning out, and so the ones that do talk about the films are getting on a bit. There's one interview in one of these that's a little bit uncomfortable because you can tell the person interviewed not that well. But that aside, this one's a lot of fun. Is it one of the best in the set? Perhaps not, but you do get to see some fantastic Boris Karloff action where he's not, well, he's sort of the villain but not completely the villain. Next, now 2 of these are also available in 4K. I've just got the Blu-ray versions. So speaking of Michael Reeves, this is 1968, and the most famous one in the set probably, Witchfinder General, which had various names. Famously, Vincent Price wasn't Michael Reeves' first choice, it was Donald Pleasance, and he and Vincent Price didn't really get on and see eye to eye, but afterwards Vincent Price realised, oh yeah, it's one of my best performances in actual fact. I mean, most people know about Witchfinder General. Again, you get the lovely alternative artwork. The Conqueror Worm. As Vincent Price plays Matthew Hopkins. This one is loaded with special features. So this is a 4K remaster, even though it's not the 4K disc. There's 2 versions of the film, the uncut UK version and the US version called The Conqueror Worm, featuring nude scenes from the export version, if you're into that kind of thing. Disgusting. Audio commentary by Kim Newman and Sean Hogan. Back in the Horse, Ian Ogilvy on Witchfinder General. Which witch is which? Adam Scowell on Witchfinder General. The editing of Witchfinder General, featuring interviews with film editor Howard Lanning, assistant editor Marion Curran, and assistant sound editor Jonathan Morris. Alternate nude scenes. The UK trailer, the Conqueror Worm trailer, and of course you get booklets. This is 86 minutes long. I've never been a huge fan of Witchfinder General. It is very good, but very much like The Wicker Man, I'm not like a huge fan of it. Also from 1968, even though the the yellow in the spine's slightly different yellow than all the other ones, which is, if you're an anal freak, that might annoy you. This is the Curse of the Crimson Altar. You can see what I mean, that yellow is slightly not quite as yellow as the other yellows. I'll have to be writing to 88 Films. This one is Christopher Lee and Boris Karloff. Again, Boris Karloff is in a wheelchair for most of this. This is completely daft. But again, it's completely daft in that late 60s, early 70s British horror that's rather endearing. Barbara Steele's in it for... They probably had her for a day, to be fair. Michael Gough's in it. It's about an antiques dealer who goes to this house looking for his brother, who seems to have disappeared. And it's always the usual, oh, I've never heard of that guy, he's never been here, I don't know what you're talking about. But of course they do know what they're talking about. Directed by Vernon Sewell, who directed another title from Tigon. Again, this is very silly, 87 minutes, but it's rather enjoyably silly. There's wonderful set pieces, an action-packed finale, and again, it's really daft and enjoyable. Because again, we get Christopher Lee and Barbara Steele, and of course Boris Karloff. So this is a commentary by Kim Newman and Sean Hogan. On the cutting floor, Howard Lanning on editing, Tigon Films. Altar of Sacrifice, Sean Hogan and H.P. Lovecraft. The Curse of the Crimson Altar, because this is loosely based on a Lovecraft story, loosely being probably kind. But Sean Hogan goes through the films that have all kind of used the Lovecraft story as a kind of base. There's Creating the Curse of the Crimson Altar, which is a making of, and there's trailers, and obviously there's the booklet as well. So Curse of the Crimson Altar is a lot of fun too. And then next is the other Vernon Sewell film. This is a film I had on Kino Redemption, but this print is far better. This is the Blood Beast Terror with Peter Cushing, Robert Fleming, Wanda Ventham, which I only realised in watching the extras of this is Benedict Cumberbatch's mum. That's this lady here. And this is a film that certainly when I watched it in the past and then watching it again, it really should be better than it is, but there's just something that doesn't quite click. So we're getting lots of murders happening, a witness who consequently goes mad, keeps raving about a big winged beast, and Peter Cushing is the police officer trying to track down what on earth it is. We've got entomologist Robert Fleming, who's doing experiments, and you've got Wanda Ventham as his quote-unquote daughter. You've got a bizarre cameo by Roy Hudd as a mortuary attendant who's just trying to eat every time people come into the mortuary. There's alternate artwork. There's a nice little play put on by Robert Fleming's students, basically Frankenstein. Yeah, there's really fun elements in it, but it never kind of comes together as well as it should have. It's still worth seeing. There's a nice turn by Glenn Edwards as a sergeant. So this has a commentary by John Hamilton and Howard Lanning. To Cut or Not to Cut, Howard Lanning on Blood Beast Terror and Witchfinder General. Terror at Grimm's Dyke's House, the making of Blood Beast Terror. The Vampire Beast Craves Blood trailer, because like all these films were probably put out in alternate titles. This is 88 minutes. And again, it's another fun one, even though he might be a little frustrated with it. Should really be better than it actually is. And then another one that I'd never seen. This is from 1969, and this is The Body Stealers. Again, this is Patrick Allen at his most womanising. Every woman he meets, he's just like trying to, I wasn't going to say bed them, but he doesn't even need a bed. He's just trying to copulate with them as quickly as possible. For example, he meets this strange woman on a beach and is instantly like, let's get it on. Bizarrely, this stars or co-stars Neil Connery, who had a fairly famous brother. He only made, I think, about 3 films, and you can kind of see why. George Sanders is in it, but again, at this stage of his career, yeah, there's quite sad stories from the making of, where Sanders was pretty much puggled most of the shoot, but then as soon as he came on camera, he could deliver his lines, but then as soon as they said cut, he was pretty much drinking. This is about disappearing pilots, as somebody's stealing them from mid-air. Again, complete nonsense, but rather enjoyable. I mean, you may look like Patrick Allen on that after you've watched it. There's the alternate artwork. I mean, George Sanders has more to do in this one than another film in the collection that we'll get to. But again, Patrick Allen's character probably wouldn't float nowadays. But again, you just have to take it for, you know, when it was made. And again, Patrick Allen at that time, it's obviously a huge draw for the ladies, apparently. So this is a fully uncut version. It is a 15 for infrequent strong nudity, so try and contain yourself. Commentary by David Flint and Alan Bryce. There's a commentary by Patrick Allen, moderated by John Hamilton. The Making of the Body Stealers, Invasion of the Body Stealers, an introduction by John Deere. A career man, Will Fowler, on George Sanders and the Body Stealers, which is actually kind of, it's an interesting piece, but it's quite sad, really. And again, this is one of the more epic of the collection, as it's 92 minutes long. And again, there's a little parachute as the little graphic on the spine. So that's the Body Stealers. Again, fairly daft. It does feel like an episode of Doctor Who, to be fair. It's just been beefed up for a film. The next one's might actually be my favourite, and I think possibly the best. This is from 1970. This is The Beast in the Cellar, which was a film I thought I had seen before, but I hadn't. It stars Beryl Reid and Flora Robson, two absolute stalwarts of British film and television. Flora Robson, one of the nuns in Black Narcissus, for example, and it's just great seeing them be the stars, basically, not just being like side characters. Directed by James Kelly, who I'm not really familiar with much or many of the films that he made. That's the alternate artwork. There's an army base about, and people are being killed by a terrifying beast. But this is actually really quite mature. It's really about PTSD before PTSD was a thing. It's about the damage that war does to families and tears families apart. Beryl Reid and Flora Robson both are sisters who saw the effects of World War I in their family, specifically their father, and how it changed them. And then when World War II came around, they were very protective of their brother. So kind of with the title The Beast in the Cellar, you know, you think it's going to be this lurid kind of exploitation film, but there's actually a lot more going on. And again, certainly in 1970, you know, PTSD wasn't that much of a thing. But again, it really is about the people left behind when men go to war, and again the effects that on soldiers when they come back, and again how that affects families. So it's actually a little gem. And again, seeing Beryl Reid and Flora Robson, Beryl Reid's the slightly weaker sister and Flora Robson's the more determined sister, but to see them get good chunky roles is just quite wonderful, especially when you think of Flora Robson and Black Narcissus. Get a warm feeling. This is 89 minutes, so this is 2K remaster from 4K scans. This has got a commentary by producer Christopher Neame and executive producer Tony Tenser, moderated by John Hamilton. It's got another commentary by film critics David Flint and Alan Bryce. Beats in the Cellar, an interview with composer Tony Macaulay. Beast in the Cells, an interview with editor Nicholas Napier Bell. Sound from the Cellar, an interview with sound camera operator Graham V. Hartston. Getting in the Cellar, an interview with actor Christopher Chittle. And again, a booklet. So this is one that I would definitely highly recommend, just to see two grand old ladies of British cinema actually been given something to do. So next is probably the second most famous film in the collection, and again this is also available in a 4K version, but again I've just got the Blu-ray. So this is The Blood on Satan's Claw. Again, another one of those British folk horror films before folk horror was actually a phrase. And again, this is one that I'd had before on another release, but the print is better on the 88 Films release. And very much like Witchfinder General and The Wicker Man, I've always liked it rather than, you know, went ape crazy on all fours for it. This might be the longest. It's 96 minutes, unbelievable. It's a true epic. It's practically David Lean proportions for this collection. And again, this is strange sacrificial with it going on in a little English village, and you have Patrick Wymark basically playing the Vincent Price role, with Michelle Dotrice years before playing Betty in Some Mothers Do Have 'Em. Directed by Piers Haggard. Again, this is an effective, creepy little film, which again is really about sex and coming of age, but this is Britain, so we don't like to talk about that kind of thing. All that horrible sexy business. So this is a brand new 4K remaster. As I said, there is the 4K version of this as well. There's a commentary by director Piers Haggard, actress Linda Hayden and writer Robert Wynne Simmons. There's a commentary with British film experts Vic Pratt and William Fowler. Satan's Skin, Robert Wynne Simmons on The Blood and Satan's Claw. The Devil's Business, Wendy Padbury on The Blood and Satan's Claw. Folk Horror, Keir Janice on The Blood on Satan's Claw. Tigon Tales of Terror, it's quite hard to say. Featurette with Michael Armstrong, Piers Haggard, Christopher Neame, Tony Tenser and Ian Ogilvy. No, Ian Ogilvy would turn up at some point. Reviving Forgotten Horrors, interview with Piers Haggard. Folktale, an interview with actor Simon Williams. Folk Art, an interview with set dresser Millie Burns. Folk Sound, an interview with sound recordist Tony Daw. Folk Music, an interview with composer Mark Wilkinson. Folk Dub, an interview with assistant dubbing mixer Graham V. Hartston. Folk Promo, an interview with publicity director Tony Tweedale. Return to Bix. Simon Williams returns to the church location, and there's trailers. So this one's absolutely stacked, with special features as well. So that's Blood and Satan's Claw from 1971. Again, as you'll see, curse, blood, death, terror, horror. Yeah, they're all over the place. And then bizarrely, in 1971, there's a Western. So out of all these horror, sci-fi, fiction, science fiction films, there's a Western, but it's no ordinary Western. It's Hanny Calder with Raquel Welch, and Robert Culp and Christopher Lee in a Western, and Ernest Borgnine, Strother Martin, Jack Elam. I mean, it's pretty amazing. The cast is quite wonderful. Raquel Welch was kind of moving on somewhat from being just a sex symbol and trying to move into tougher roles, and this is certainly a bit tougher. She's raped by Strother Martin and Jack Elam, who are playing fairly disgusting characters, and she wants her revenge, so she meets Robert Culp, who's a gunfighter, who's to teach her how to shoot and kill. Directed by veteran Burt Kennedy. This is 85 minutes long, and this is actually a lot of fun. Raquel Welch is fairly plausible and does well. As you can see down the bottom, Diana Dors is in it as well. You can tell it's got a little bit of Britishness in it. Obviously the poster was still selling her as a sex symbol, even though these are the three men who rape her. Yeah, Ernest Borgnine's involved in the nasty sexual assault as well, but that's obviously, the poster doesn't really suggest that those three men do terrible things to her. I was actually surprised at how enjoyable this is. Raquel Welch is actually very good, and Robert Culp's wonderful as well. Yeah, quite bizarre in all this horror, this Hanny Calder with Raquel Welch. And then finally, the last one to come out, as I said, The Virgin Witch is still to come. I'm not sure about any others. This is from 1972, and this is Doomwatch with Ian Bannon. This is 92 minutes long. This has got the radioactive symbol as a little icon. So this was based on a TV show on the BBC. I never saw any of it. It was before my time. There was 36 episodes, but 14 of them are lost forever. So there's only 22 left. I don't know whether it's in, possibly in DVD, I'm not quite sure. Directed by Peter Sadsey, who did Hammer work. He directed possibly Scars of Dracula. I'm sure I'll be corrected. So this has the stars of the TV show in supporting roles, because it really shows you the difference between TV and film. They obviously weren't going to have them as the stars of the film, so Ian Bannon and Judy Geeson come in. Again, this is about a remote island. I believe it's supposed to be in Scotland somewhere, but they shot in Cornwall, and with the exception of Ian Bannon, there's not a Scottish voice to be heard. But the villagers are becoming a little bit strange. It almost starts like The Wicker Man, with Ian Bannon turning up and everybody acting fairly, not necessarily passive aggressive, just aggressive to him. He even goes to the church to find somewhere to stay, and the vicar turns him away because they've got a secret that they don't want to share with their mainland. But it also kind of plays as what happened to islanders, because there's plenty of islands in Scotland where the inhabitants were pretty much forced to come to the mainland, and for various reasons. So it is about the death of island communities as well as the kind of threat and the reason for why people are beginning to behave strangely. Again, George Sanders, bless his cotton socks, he's in this as well for a couple of scenes as the head of the Navy, and again, apparently he was drinking heavily, and then as soon as the cameras rolled he would do his stuff, and then as soon as the camera stopped he'd be downing whiskey. But this is one of the early examples of like an environmental film. I mean, 1972, talking about the environment and the damage that we're doing to the environment. Fortunately nowadays we don't have environmental problems. It was all fixed by governments coming together and working together for the greater good. So we don't even have environmental problems anymore. Crazy. This is 92 minutes long. Ian Bannon is fantastic. Really passionate performance as he's trying to convince these villagers to get treatment, but of course the only way they can get treatment is to go to their mainland, which they don't want to do. Sorry, it wasn't Scars of Dracula, it was Taste the Blood of Dracula and Countess Dracula and Hands of the Ripper that Peter Sadzay directed for Hammer. This has got a commentary by Kim Newman and Sean Hogan. It's also got a commentary by Peter Sadzay. There's an introduction by Peter Sadzay. Saving Our Oceans, Jean Trend on Doomwatch. So she's one of the minor part of the Doomwatch team in the film, but she was one of the stars of the TV show, or at least season 2 of the TV show. To the big screen, Making Doomwatch, which is just about, bringing it from television to the cinema. And again, you get booklets and trailers. So again, it's actually a really enjoyable little film. And again, very much like The Beast in the Cellar, it does have underlying themes that are just a little bit more complex than your basic science fiction horror film. If you recognise this actress, she plays the owner of the one pub in the village, and of course 5 years later she would play Luke Skywalker's aunt, who would be mercilessly killed by stormtroopers. Obviously their aim wasn't that bad when they killed Luke's aunt and uncle. So that's just a little look at the Tigon selection. Again, are any of these films masterpieces? Probably not. Well, definitely not. Are they a lot of fun? Yes, they are. Are there a couple of gems in here? Certainly. If you're a certain age, you probably grew up with some of these films. Again, some of them I've never seen before, and were pleasantly surprised. Especially The Beast in the Cellar. That's an absolute little gem. But thanks very much for watching. As I said, The Virgin Witch is coming in the end of November, I believe. I don't know about anything else. As I said, I think Tigon made 12 or 13 horror films, so I'm not quite sure if there'll be any more. But it is a welcome addition. I did have, as I said, Witchfinder General, Blood Bleeds Terror on other Blu-ray formats, and Blood and Satan's Claw as well, but these are all upgrades as far as picture quality. And as I said, Witchfinder General and Blood and Satan's Claw have a 4K version in the same 88 Films Tigon collection if you prefer the 4K. I think Nazarene Prod did a video on the Witchfinder General 4K, so you can go over to his channel and check that out. So thanks so much for watching. Please let me know if you've seen any of these films and which ones are your favourites, and hopefully you'll join me again for more episodes of In the Frame. This is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films saying farewell.